to introduce ourselves to you.
Okay, hold on, please.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, well,
Okay, good afternoon. This is still Tuesday, January 27, 2026, and this is the second part of our meeting. This is Senate Institutions. We will be going over the Digital Services 2026 annual report. We have quite a few people in the room to help us go through that. And we'll just start out with committee members introducing themselves. Wendy Harrison. Represent the Wyndham District and chair of this committee.
and I'm Rob Plunkett. I've met everyone except maybe you, Bennington District and vice chair of the.
Joe Major, Windsor District.
Russ Siegels, Essex District. John Benson, Orange District.
Okay, and then we'll have you introduce yourself as you please and as you testify. And you'll recall that this committee it now has jurisdiction over IT in the Senate. And so we have been getting to know you last year, and now we're doing more, and look forward to hearing what's going on and determining how we go forward.
Well, for the record, I'm Denise Riley Hughes. I'm the secretary for the Agency of Digital Services and the state chief information officer.
I am Kate Slocum. I am the Chief Financial Officer for the Agency of Digital Services.
And I'm Stacy Gibson Grenfield. I'm the chief program officer for the Agency of Digital Services.
Great. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I know that we had an opportunity to half meet in a joint session.
We did. So let's go
Thank you.
from the beginning, please.
Okay, so you would like us to cover the annual report and
Yeah.
some highlights.
Yes, and we can take our time with that too. We don't have to go
Okay.
too fast.
Is there a preference in order of touching on the finance piece or the
Well,
EPMO piece first?
we need to make sure that we hear about the finance
Yeah.
piece. That's critical. But the status of the projects is necessary too.
Perfect. Okay. Well, we'll have John Kelly present on the screen. We bring our own IT support.
Hopefully it works.
So the annual report this year you will find is a little different than last year. We wanted to make sure that we focused on what did we accomplish over the last year, but also with the statutory change around dashboard and documentation and data regarding projects. That is also inclusive of the FMO annual report that is linked out from the ADS report. And then we also include the finance data from the year prior and I believe that we do a snapshot. There is some information because we have made some significant change in organizational structure and the finance structure of ADS coming into FY27, but we made some initial changes through 26 to make it happen. And we can talk a little bit about that. Okay.
Can't get into Zoom.
We can't get into
I can't get into Zoom. Like I can't get into the app.
Do you need help? I mean, assistance. Or is there anything we can do? Sure.
It's such a fresh link, John, just in case we need it. Yes.
So why don't we, we'll get started just on the 3-year strategy. And I think a lot of this will sound like repeat to the committee in regards to what ADS has been focusing on. So when I joined the state 3 years ago, we really took a look at the maturity of the agency and what our responsibilities are to being able to deliver effective IT services and solutions to our partners in state government and ultimately to Vermonters. So we focused our initiatives and effort around 4 major strategic areas, one being user experience. And ultimately the primary user in that is Vermonters. Secondary user is our users across state government. And we do have a third user group, which is our own internal ADS users too, because if we are not operating as a one ADS, then it makes it really challenging for our partners to get the level of service that they are intending for. The other one is standards. So ensuring that we're following aligned standards and framework across the deployment of systems, the configuration, and the architecture of systems as well. But this is IT standards from a technology ecosystem, but then also security standards. I know that our UPMO standards are very matured, but we follow a global model for the work that we do there.
Do you mind questions as we go along? So what standards include level of service kind of standards?
Yes. Yes.
Great.
The standards also include components of moving from a transactional model to a service model. So I think that there's not one person I've heard from that says ADS and technology information that we provide is not confusing. So we're trying to demystify it a little bit by ensuring that those expected standards exist, but then also I'm going to jump to predictability. The predictability piece is both in the finance, the budget planning, the cost structure, the service quality, the capacity, and making sure that those data points and those measures are available both to the consumers, but also to share annually with legislature too, so that you can see how well we're doing as you have the oversight role and requirements. And I think that's something that we have really taken into consideration with this model as well, is making sure that we've demystified things enough so that it can allow for effective oversight and it can reduce the confusion. And then the last thing is the reducing complexity piece, going from a department with everybody having their own way of doing IT 9 years ago to now being a centralized agency that has the responsibility of all IT operations across state government, burning down the technical debt and ensuring that we are doing things in a way that can have achievable outcomes. That's what that reducing the complexity is. Everybody doesn't get to do their own thing in their own way. We've got to be consistent. And so that keeps things less complex. Any questions or comments? Do we have successful presentation yet? Okay. That's great. It happened. And I do believe that this was shared too. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was. And I think it would be helpful if you have examples of things like
Sure.
3 days to do X or that kind of.
We can definitely talk about this. So let me really just cover the other side too, so that you know what we've done to date. We've completely changed our leadership structure as well. So we had a very wide but not deep structure. So it was it limited the accountability and responsibility sharing and the consistency in service delivery. So we have realigned the leadership structure, but what we've done is we've also created portfolios. And I think I remember last year, and I know in Jive Talk, we talked about the portfolio model that we've aligned our teams into, focused around the technology used by the different agencies and departments that interface and interconnect with each other. So it's kind of the IT view of state government. So we have 4 portfolios that we are aligning both in the project management team, in our business architecture and enterprise architecture teams, also in the business office. They're going to be undertaking that in FY27 as well. And then our field services. So those are enforcement and regulation, operations and administration, environment and infrastructure, and the last one is life and learning. So when we look at the ecosystem of technology and the user communities within each one of those, they're very likely serving the same people or touching the same asset environments. So a good example would be permitting. So when you look at the concept of permitting, in environment and infrastructure, agriculture, Agency of Natural Resources, and Agency of Transportation all touch aspects of permitting. And in the tech space, if we can look at that as part of a centralized ecosystem, then we're making better decisions for everybody, even if a source of funding may initiate in only one of the departments or agencies. So it allows for repeatability of investments, and it also allows for lower cost of IT spend when we start looking at it that way. In the life and learning, these are departments and agencies that typically will touch the same Vermonters. So when we want to drive a more comprehensive user experience for a Vermonter who is in need and trying to get a level of service, then under a single portfolio, no matter which department they are supporting and servicing, those field services folks can understand and support the demands of the user and the demands of the service with a broader perspective.
So that'd be like AHS.
The departments with an AHS, yes, but we did move corrections over to enforcement regulation purely from the sense of the regulatory compliance requirements that they have to maintain and who they are interfacing with across state government. So you think of CGIS, they have to maintain levels of CGIS requirements. They're interfacing with the Attorney General's office and the courts. And the state's attorneys and sheriffs. And so that allows us to keep them within an ecosystem that they are most interfacing with.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And you probably know they're intentionally in AHS, which normally they're not. That function is normally not in that type of area. But the idea is that it's supposed to be corrections, not just incarceration.
Correct.
So, I mean, there are going to be things that don't fit perfectly in one.
Correct. But their user community will have the same level of output support as any of the other portfolios. So it's still about excellent service, but it's about making sure that the data is controlled and restricted in a way that matches like agencies, but also shorter route to sharing.
Mm-hmm.
So Department of Corrections interfaces and shares regularly with state's attorney's offices or sheriff's offices. And if we start looking at everybody in siloed ecosystems, then we're recreating data sets 5 times over, increasing the cost of IT spend across the state. And so this at least keeps the opportunity for cost get down, while people are still going to want to maintain a level of independence and uniqueness, but it does at least reduce the silos.
Sure. And we have had issues with data, not necessarily ADS issues, but we have had challenges
Yeah.
getting data
Yeah.
between
And
organizations.
so our job is the enablement piece, and it's not necessarily our data, but we want to make sure that it's protected based on how the agencies or departments are expecting it to. A good example, I think, a comparison. If you look at the Vermont State Police barracks, they all have various facilities across the state that they're doing state operations in. The demands that they have in there with, the level of security, the level of controls, the level of restricted Wi-Fi access, very similar to what we would see within correctional facilities too. And we wouldn't have that in a legacy model where everybody's working independently. One other thing to call out too is that when we did the analysis around our field coverage, less than 50% of the departments and agencies had dedicated field staff.
Had what?
Dedicated field staff. So it has and have nots. And so now we've created equitable ecosystem for everybody.
And we say designated staff, that's your staff you're talking about.
That were absorbed when ADS was created, yes.
Okay.
That never changed, that model never changed, and so it just created greater inequities.
Okay, great. This is helpful.
Oh, excellent. So this is just part of the strategic plan. This is something that we had drafted, and we are tracking to those breakthrough indicators and the success metrics. So that doesn't change every year. This is the 5-year outlook. And so we're about right in the middle of that, coming into, this calendar year. But we are on track for meeting all those requirements. And that's where you'll also see those 4 categories that I had shared before about user experience, predictability, standards, and reducing complexity. So I don't want to get into too much detail unless there's something that catches your eye, but we also wanted to highlight some of the successes as well, things that have happened across the state that have gone well. These successes are specific to what the Agency of Digital Services has done, and we are tracking very healthy in all of these spaces. So what you will see next year is in core enterprise services, there are 14 categories that are tied to the work done in that space. And this is any service that any user in state government should expect to have when they walk in the door. So they should expect a baseline level of security, and our baseline's not at the floor, it's about midway up. They should be able to have access to the state network to do their job. They should have access to foundational data support so they can at least call someone and say, am I doing this the right way? They should have help desk, they should have desktop support. Those are non-negotiables. And so if we're supporting one group, we need to be supporting all groups equally. And that's where you'll start seeing the measures that I've shared around performance, quality, and capacity.
Were there folks that had a higher level that you had to reduce their level? Service?
No, actually, we didn't.
Good.
What we did was we pressed capacity. So if we have X number of people supporting this current space and they're supporting 50% of state government, if we ask them to track to their current capacity being full, are we able to maintain that same level of quality? And so far in the core spaces, we've been able to do that. We've also taken a little bit of time and cost from Stacey's team under EPMO. It's really the business transformation group, so that when new initiatives are desired or requested, we have gone ahead and made this team available to everybody, which is fantastic because they're working on a fingerprint background check process. They are working on some of the grants management through the Agency of Education. And so these are things that haven't started out as IT, but there's a business demand that will require technology, and it allows us to really uncover what the true need is, what the requirements are, what the outcomes are before we start solutioning the tech. And it's a good transition to make sure that they've got the right costs and business case built for it. And that
gets complicated. It isn't just finding out what we do as a state.
Yes, I mean, I think the real improvement here is instead of, asking everybody to have all the answers up front, when somebody comes in and says, I need a new grant management solution, and just throwing a technology solution at them and trying to estimate costs, and then starting a procurement, what we're really doing is digging in, well, what do you really need? Like, what is the business problem you're trying to solve? What are the outcomes you're trying to achieve? We bring business architects to the table. We do process improvement work with them. Justin Kinney, the chief performance officer, is part of this process. And we just do this whole triage with them over just a few weeks to really get a firm grasp on what it is they're trying to accomplish. And then they can go in one of three directions. They can do a process improvement effort, just using what they already have without having to purchase or buy or pay for anything new. And if they go that track, we can provide services there, or Justin will lead that effort. If it is a technology solution, they may already have a technology solution that we're supporting. So then we would look at our core enterprise services or field services staff to come in and just, tweak it. Like, it could be an automated workflow on SharePoint that solves their problem. And you don't have to go out and buy anything. And then if it looks like we do actually have to go out and procure something, we, at that point, start the procurement process with building out RFPs. And that's when the project management office gets engaged, and we develop a business case and cost workbooks, and we have a much better grasp on where we're going, what's the outcome we want to achieve, how we're going to measure success, and how much we're going to actually cost the state by doing so. Because at that point, you know how long it's going to take, what the technology is you're buying, how much they're going to charge you for it, and how many staff you need and how long you need them for. Whereas in the old process, We were doing all of that way out here before we really knew what direction we were going in, or if it was even the right direction. So we're very excited. We've proven it out on a couple of initiatives already. The fingerprint background check process that the secretary mentioned is a good example of that. That took a few weeks of doing a lot of discovery work with the business. There was some process improvement efforts that came out of it, but there's now an RFP, I believe, out on the street to procure a solution to come in and make it more efficient for all of state government, not just, one entity. And that work included public safety. It included the Child Development Division under the Department for Children and Families. I think the Department of Human Resources got engaged and the Agency of Education as well. So it was a real cross-collaborative effort across state government, it wasn't just public safety or CDD coming in and saying, help us with this. It was really looking at it across the whole ecosystem, which was really great.
Yeah, that's great. So is that the fingerprints that teachers need? Because
Yeah.
there was an issue with that a couple of years ago, so that's
Yeah,
probably.
daycare centers,
Exactly what
teachers,
this is.
state employees.
Yeah, and they had to wait a long time and.
And that level of
Okay.
effort that
Cool.
group of stakeholders put in is actually going to accelerate the process so that I anticipate by December, they will have the system fully in place and operational. So there's real measures and metrics associated with it around shortening the window from 4 months turnaround and not using the, I don't want to take words out of their mouth. They have an exception process that they call something. And it's escaping my mind right now, but that should be the exception and not the rule. And unfortunately, it's being used every time because the process is so long.
Oh,
And
okay,
so,
yeah.
the workaround.
right, the workaround. And before we solve it with throwing technology at it, they've now architected the entire demand, issue, problem, and desired outcome. And now it better informs the technology.
Great. So you probably documented that, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
if I wanted to know more,
It's in the
find
report.
something.
Yep, it is.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And you can always reach out for more.
Security is a team sport. I think that this slide kind of speaks for itself. We monitor, last year it was 358.8 billion security events. Now, a security event is anything happening in the environment. It could be somebody logging on, logging, auditing, tracking, problems, incidents, bad actors, threats that bad actors are trying to make and they're not successful. Anything would be considered that type of event. Through the work that our security office has done, they took a very intentional approach around improving operations and support of security. They take this role very, very seriously. And so they were looking at how they were handling tickets and cases and requests that were on average taking over 37 days to fully resolve. So there was a break in the system and a break in the process. They are now on average of under 4 days. So that's a huge improvement in response time, but it also allows us to really show those metrics around capacity and performance. So we know what they're performing at now. We know what their capacity is right now. And if we ask them to do more, we could be sacrificing quality and performance of security response while and having an undercapacity of resources. But without that data, it's really hard to make those decisions on what's needed for the state. We do get to talk a lot about data and AI, and I would just say that we're encourage you to go back and read the details of the report if this is something that interests you. But ChatGPT was something that we had launched last year. It is something only available to state employees and executive branch and elected offices that are being supported by ADS. But we've been able to roll out a service that has a higher level of security and privacy restriction that ChatGPT or Gemini or a commercial consumer service wouldn't have. And we are trending on new users every week, but an average of about 700 users a week accessing this across the state, which is pretty good for a grassroots system.
And then do you hear from the users on how it's going?
All the time. Yes, there is a feedback loop. I probably don't need to cover this, but I'm sure everybody's very familiar with maps. And the work that the data team under the GIS group has done in regards to the School Explorer and the District Builder. That's been quite a bit of work that they've done, but they do this across state government for agency of natural resources, agriculture, transportation, many of the committees in legislature as well. And this is the one team within ADS that is public facing. So they're also running a committee that is made up of, I think, rural, municipal, I'm gonna complete regional, thank you. It's that bad. I apologize.
I'm sorry.
After lunch, my.
Oh, sorry.
The regional planning commissions, that's what I was thinking of. And so they are, this is the highest number of interactions that they've had since VCGI was created. So they tracked 1 billion different map service requests this year.
So this, yeah, I know we got a lot out of them on the school district, redistricting committee. They were wonderful and they were very easy to work with.
Yeah.
So the regional planning commission, is that the implementation of the new regulations?
Well, they interface with the GIS team for very many different things happening among towns and communities and the regions across the state. So this example was really just but from the screenshots, what's happening around the education reform. And then they do a lot with housing and property data with towns as well.
Yeah, so they started doing that a couple years ago, so that's really good.
Yeah.
Very helpful.
And interestingly enough, I'm showing you all these successes. We've not made a single tangible investment in any of these places. These are things that we're reusing existing technology and doing what we can to minimize, reduce, or mitigate the overage costs of licenses and technology. And so they've done a lot with a little and a very small team. AI systems inventory is required under statute. So every year you'll see that list. And I would say right now we have doubled the various AI systems across the state. We're looking to build some public-private partnerships in regards to creating an AI hub, interfacing with education and higher education in towns around problems that Vermont government is facing, but problems that Vermonters are facing, to be able to create a safe test environment to allow for almost like a pilot factory to operate and run, so that we're not testing on state systems and with state production and data. But this is a early incubation project that they're working on. Then I'm going to hand things over to Kate.
Want to talk about budget?
Sure. Always, right?
But are there any questions? I feel like I'm really peppering you with fast talk and information. It's a lot to cover.
Is this you guys, partial viewer? That you as well?
Yes.
Okay, good. I use that a lot.
Excellent.
Very, very helpful.
I'm glad that it works on your mobile device
It
too.
works. Yeah, yeah.
Any other questions?
Okay, so this slide right here shows what we refer to as one of our dashboards. It's kind of ADS in a snapshot from a financial perspective. In 27, we put forward a budget of $96.5 million. And there's a breakout of how that budget is supported, what funding sources are supported. In the past, it was primarily an internal service fund called the Communication and Information Technology Fund. And you can see that actually that has been broken up a little bit more this year. We have a variety of funds that are supporting our overall budget. Many of them are internal service funds, so that means that we will incur the costs and then we look to how we need to recover for that. It could be a bill back to an agency uniquely to that agency, or it could be through some other methodology, whether it be based off of user count for core enterprise services, or based off of license count for an agency and department's consumption for CPU of private cloud. Or it could be based off of a rate card for professional services consumed by an agency. And so we now, instead of having the CIT primarily to cover those costs, we have 3 more internal service funds that are being established and proposed in 27. One of them is specific to what we formerly referred to as bespoke, and it's about $5 million to cover things like hardware, stock software products. We also have ADS enterprise offerings. That is for SLA services. So enterprise, I'm sorry, not SLA services, SLA products. So enterprise products that are available to all consumers across the executive branch. Things like our private cloud consumption is found in there, or our automated call distribution services are found in there. So that licensing associated with, and the customers basically pay for what they're using and nothing more under that.
And what does SLA stand for?
Well, it stands for service level agreement, but it really is a legacy term and something we're looking to change because it's confusing. It really doesn't fit that offering any longer. It's a term that was inherited from our DII days.
So it's a contracted services, kind of.
It is core enterprise services biggie sized. So everybody
Okay.
gets,
Is that the technical?
So now it's gonna be CBI.
so
Or
so it would be standard platforms that exist, but your individual agency consumption of it. So not 100% of the departments and agencies are interested in consuming that, but we create an environment so that those that do need to consume it, we can limit the chargeback just to their portion of the consumption.
So like optional first.
Exactly.
It's
But bespoke is the unique optional services. SLA would be the foundational services that they want more of.
Like standard services.
yes.
So if somebody says, well, I'm happy with the level of office hours help desk support, but we have staff that are here until midnight. So we want extra support. We would recover the everything beyond baseline. We would recover that through SLA.
Okay,
I know.
that's all right.
We
Maybe-
tried to drive the SLA number down. That was really the biggest thing. But SLA is a charge in arrears. It's a arrears spending model. So we call it the credit card, but it's a deficit spend model because you consume it now and you don't have to pay for it later, but somebody's got to float it. And the SLA budget and the consumption grew greater year over year than the other categories in a way that was not controllable. And so focus on service, not transaction, document the service and the consumers, and draw down the deficit spend model allows us to have greater predictability in the IT spend. It's just that is going to take a little bit more time to start scaling back or make a decision on whether or not we want to charge in consuming year, or if we want to continue floating the year in arrears model.
Oh, so it's that
Nothing
much
else-
in arrears. I was thinking it was
nothing
maybe
else
a month
in
in
A year,
12 months.
it's
arrears.
12 month
Oh.
arrears. So when we start talking about the predictability piece, it's not an ideal model to put a lot of workload in and a lot of IT services in, because it's not controllable. So we did successfully draw it down,
Mhm.
and that was the establishment of core enterprise services. But I would be happy if there were 3 categories, maybe 4. Timesheet, which I'd like to diminish, SLA, core enterprise services, and bespoke. But this is, we're going to test it out on this model this year. What I'd like to not do is recover from multiple funding sources for the same service.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be the piece that makes it a lot harder to reconcile. I want to make sure that we've got exact costs of the service, how it recovered, what the total cost was, what the projection is it seeing a industry inflation trend in that particular area, or is it a service that we don't want to provide anymore? And so I think with the work that we're doing and the work that we're doing with finance and management, we now have some visibility to those trends that we never did before.
All right,
We're
and
tweaking
is there an
it.
incentive for the departments to not use more than they need?
Not today, because we're still tracking to that performance.
But that's your goal?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah, that makes sense. Cause it's almost like a utility, it sounds like to me. So.
I thought you.
No, I thought you.
Sitting here scoping it in, minding my own business.
We've been working on this for 2 years, and so the opportunity to, poke holes in it, and where is it not working, and does it show the transparency? So far, everything is pointing to this is the right thing to do for Vermont. And this offers a level of transparency that I don't think that we've ever been able to provide before, that we've been wanting to and trying to, and this is now naturally just built into our structural model.
Great, and what's the dollar, just roughly? I'm just wondering if it's one of the colors in the pie chart.
It's three of the colors in the pie chart.
so,
We have another slide that goes over that.
yeah, yeah.
I'm just wondering what
Time.
proportion that is of the total, of the
For-
total expenses are in that SLA category.
Oh, and
In the
SLA.
SLA, okay. Let me see if I can read this eye chart.
Just roughly.
It is about 11 million.
Okay.
Which it wasn't before. It's dropped down dramatically. I think it was in the 40.
11.7. SLA was close to 30 million. That's what we're.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're at 11.7 now.
So you reduced it,
Yes.
and did you reduce it by reducing the amount of what you did and what they did versus putting it in another category?
Both. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We did a little bit of shifting. And that was to say, okay, where are the consistent services for all customers? And if there is consistency in those services, let's make sure we're recovering it consistently as well. So in those instances, we took it out of SLA or out of timesheet and moved it under core enterprise services because it is a consistent service that everyone's consuming and everyone needs access to. So there was some shifting that happened as a result of that. There was some decrease as well, because in doing that, we were identifying, wait, we've been recovering this under maybe bespoke. We don't need to do that if we're consistently providing the service under core enterprise services.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was the type of, that was the category rather than the amount, but that makes sense. Okay.
So the other thing we're supposed to report on annually is savings that have been either achieved or cost avoidance. Since the creation of our agency, we've been able to identify over $48 million in savings and cost avoidance. In the last fiscal year, we were able to identify $2.7 million in those savings, which is pretty consistent with years past. We do about $2.5 to $3.5 million in savings that we're identifying as we go along. And that's just from looking at what are we offering across the enterprise? Where can we replicate that rather than rebuild it, rejigger it? So we've been pretty successful in that. And that's with the model that we have today. And when I say that, you'll see that this budget is a decrease from last year. Last year, we were at $137 million. Now we're under that $100 million mark. We're at $96 million. Part of that is because our bespoke spending authority has been changed and revamped quite a bit. We are looking at a $5 million bespoke amount, where in past years, we were looking at $30, $40, $50 million bespoke. So that is a big change. From one year to the next.
Do you have a revenue stream or anything that you can make money on?
Not yet.
Cool.
So once we have core enterprise services, we actually service over 20 municipal um, we'll say towns in a particular department, so it's PDs. There is an opportunity to, once we have the core enterprise services in a competent service model quality structure, then they have the opportunity to potentially consume to those services. That is not what we, like right now, we're just passing through costs to them, flat costs without the overhead. So they are getting access to IT staff and services for what they're consuming, but they're only paying for, let's say, the license today.
Yeah.
We did talk about timesheet billing. So a timesheet billing, if we have two bill rates that were created in 2017, 2018. $84 and $88. That's something that's widely known. It's all over our map. But if you do the math on $84 and $88, then we would likely be paying people $50,000 a year to do pretty advanced IT stuff. So the timesheet billing area is a deficit spend model. We knew going into timesheet billing of field services, and that includes EPO as well. We're about $7 million deficit in field identified resources alone. If we use the timesheet billing model, that's a problem. And so if we actually increase the rate, and we did this analysis, if we increase the rate at the same rate that the budget was increasing at that percentage, we would be at $114 and $119 an hour, and we would be giving $70,000 back to the state this year. So we would be being able to balance our budget, recover the costs of IT and IT resources, and give money back to the state. But that, it was an oversight. It was not something that happened. And so hindsight's 2020, right? So this is why we need to really focus on fixing this now, so that we don't have an area of deficit spend, but we could open the door for potential revenue streams to tie down the cost of the per user rate of CES. I get way too excited about this because I'm really
No,
I do believe it's the right thing for us. It's just
it's definitely good. Oh, do you need to?
If I-
It's great to track it. I think because what I heard was that it's municipalities who are paying that now.
municipalities aren't paying, they're paying for the licenses today.
But that's the customer is towns. Is what you heard.
It was an example, yeah.
So
But
there are
I don't
other
think that we
customers?
would, I don't think that we would necessarily find that as necessarily a revenue stream. I think that we would find that as a cost per user reduction of core enterprise services. So it would be a way of recovering. So we still consider recovery to be revenue, right? But it's not a profit source.
Right.
So we are built on internal service funds, and part of the reason for that is so that the state can capitalize on federal grants that are out there or permit fees that are available, and utilize that to pay for IT services. In some ways, it's a good model. The problem is, like Denise said, we haven't been able to adjust our rates over time. We haven't been able to classify our expenditures appropriately so that we really can use those opportunities to the state's best interest. For example, we've heard from other agencies and departments that, hey, this allocation number, I can't really use federal dollars to pay for that, or I can't take the timesheet bill that you've given me and apply that to a federal grant. It's just not, the feds are not allowing it. They don't see it as equity being provided for these services across. So this model brings us into an opportunity where we can look to capitalize on those federal dollars that are available for IT expenditures.
Okay.
The floods are a good example. FEMA wouldn't allow us to use ADS resources to do certain work because the chargeback of the 8488 didn't match the more mature model that over the last decade FEMA has moved to.
And what's the mature model?
Their model matured more to show that our rate card didn't meet federal requirements, and now under this new model it does. So we can use state resources when we have situations with those federal spend.
All right. And are those federal regulations, do you expect them to continue? I mean, are they logical? Do they make sense?
They do make sense, yeah. Will it change?
Yeah, no, I mean, everything does change, but if it, and it might be a model that's used in private sector too. I would think.
Yeah. So, do you go on to the next one? So
And
this,
the next one, I think we belabored this.
yeah, I mean, this just basically shows where we were. What
Well, actually, everybody did
Oh.
see, yes, but you guys didn't get, no, the colors are cool.
Oh.
It's fine.
No, I think it was actually
It's
an elegant way to describe this because it's
It's
kind of challenging.
It is challenging. And so the colors in the circles indicate the recovery area that we're moving to. So we're moving to 3 specific areas. And it just goes to show that we peanut buttered everything across. I use the word peanut butter because that's what it was. And how do you break out the percentages? How do you validate and guarantee that you've been able to recover 100% of that cost if you have 7 different recovery areas that you're tracking it through? So we went for reducing complexity and the predictability.
So like timesheet, for example, is in the blue, so it's in, actually, that doesn't make sense. No, because it's also in the purple.
Yeah. So we reduced timesheet. We reduced the number of staff that were aligned to a recoverable timesheet model. Moved some of them into core and price services. And so that now tracks their work on capacity. The field services is still built in a way that is timesheet billing recoverable. But once they move to a documented services model across the portfolios, we'll start seeing the reductions in the timesheet, and we'll typically only see timesheet for projects.
And that's core enterprise?
That's under the field services.
agencies.
Yeah, agency solution.
Okay.
We want to be able to distinguish the independent project costs and the unique platform costs from the standard operations of IT and state government.
Yeah, let me ask you a question, because we're going to a model of, where we pay the vendor, forever in theory, right? I mean, there are 20-year contracts, 10-year contracts.
It all depends on, I mean, if you're looking at a business critical system, like the DMV, drivers,
Mhm.
PT trips.
Yeah.
That's a system that you want to make sure that you have longevity built into the contract and the technology. But when it comes to some of our auditing systems or our, let's say e-signature or something like that, those are more commodity-based systems that we do have the option of replacing and choosing different solutions over time.
Okay, so you can own those and change them out.
Yeah.
Okay,
And that's the autonomy of the service model too, is that we've committed to a level of service, quality, and performance. If we're not achieving that with the current system, we have that option to pull it out without having to do a massive high cost project. It's those business specific systems that need some attention. We don't want everything to be a massive $50 million IT modernization project, but there is going to be some need for that and demand for it. But for each one of those, now the field services has to design their support delivery around that platform, where that wasn't done before. They were just burning time on a system, but we didn't have any documentation to show, well, what is it that you're doing? What's the performance of the system? Is it meeting security requirements? Does it, what's the connectivity rate? And so now we're looking a little holistically at the ecosystem.
great. So how many or what proportion of systems do you think are going to be in the DMV category of,
And so we moved them to enforcement and regulation.
well, not that category, but the category of having annual payments?
Well, now that they're in what we call M&O, so maintenance and operations, that's where they should have a standard rate
Yes,
annually
okay,
as opposed to a big capital expenditure.
right,
And
so,
that's part of the intake process that Stacy was talking about, is that the goal is not go live. That is not the outcome that we're trying to achieve in massive implementation projects. The goal is driver services, car registrations, you name it. Now, if you turn around and say, well, we want to add another service to DMV, there's already a system that exists in place that we can layer on top of. And if we're not achieving the outcomes that were set in that initial business plan and built for the solution, it's a lot easier to start seeing that data from that regular annual cost and structure, because we would be reporting it in the performance here, and then you would be able to see it in the costing piece too. So we know where the ups and downs are.
I think I follow what your question was, and that is the difference between a cloud-based
Is it cloud-based?
piece, which you pay an annual fee for, versus server-based program of which you purchase and then maintain. Is that what you were?
yes, exactly, yeah.
Totally different world today. So
Yeah.
every vendor, every solution, every product is
It's
different
all
regardless of whether it's cloud hosted, internal hosted, and or SaaS. So business continuity is the piece that I want to focus on the most when it comes to that. So you can be cloud hosted in the state's data center. You could be cloud hosted in a third-party data center. You could be cloud hosted in a state-run cloud data center. So it's all different, but yes, we would be moving to less of a CapEx model,
Yes,
more of a FinOps based model, so that we know what the cost of the service is, regardless of the power of the technology behind it. So if we need to make changes to the technology, or say we're going to reduce the cost of the service, you have all the data to see what reducing would look like and where it would be reduced. If it's in the technology, if it's in the staff, if it's in the technology staff, or if it's in flipping the vendor. But we can't give you those clear answers today because we're transacting tech. We're transacting at the little SKU level, as opposed to looking at the whole service and everything that goes into hosting it, supporting it, and paying for it. Does that make sense?
yes, but I want to talk about this. part.
Yeah. I'm happy to. We are about 75% cloud hosted.
What about, what percentage of, not CapEx, the services, what we pay for?
That's what you're pulling up data on now. So we don't have that exact number, but these are the analyses that Kate's team is doing today.
Okay.
And everything that we're running.
Great, thank you.
So this chart just basically shows you how our budget links back to the diagram that was shown before. So the green towers that you see in here support core enterprise services. The purple towers, they support SLA and timesheet, also agency solutions, purchase agency solutions, and the blue is the bespoke, which is really specific to the customer's desire or need. So if we go to the next chart, this shows you the overall budget for ADS from fiscal year 25, when we started on this journey of identifying a need to move into core enterprise services, what 26 looked like. So you'll see there's that yellow that's pulled in to the CES line.
That was a $15 million appropriation to draw down the potential for double billing, because we were pulling foundational services out of SLA.
Okay, double billing on your part.
Double,
Yeah, to the
right, we
agency.
didn't want to bill the agency for in fiscal year at the same time that they're gonna get a bill for the last fiscal year for the same thing.
Sounds
And
like
so
a good idea.
that's what the yellow was.
That's what-
You all approved that, thank you, it worked.
And then 27 shows that that true year of core enterprise services costs compared to the demand services, which are like timesheet, agency specific needs, and then the overall budget.
So this is the first time, if you look at the blue, that was appropriations. So we were pretty static for 8 years in about the same amount, anywhere from 11 to $12 million is what the EDS allocation was. So it really didn't cover the cost of services. It just lessened the cost of bill back. And we're not doing that anymore. This is the first time that you'll see in the budget package that there is I think a $9 million general fund appropriation. So that is covering the $44 million cost of core enterprise services to lessen the chargeback rate to the agency. So finance and management came up with a formula that is based on a per user rate that you'll probably hear some agencies talk about because it is far, it's 4x what the original appropriation was.
Under allocation.
But with the demand driving down, the overall cost is actually dropping.
Interesting, but the per
Yeah.
unit cost is very, so the blue plus the red equals the green, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so the cost of IT spend based on what we have in our visibility is dropping down. And it gives us an opportunity to really manage those to a hard number. Agencies run their business offices a little bit differently. So where they draw their funds from, that's something that we don't have visibility into. So that is something that now that they're seeing core enterprise services for the first time, they feel like they're paying more for IT. It's just coming in under a different view. So they won't be charged at the end of the year for a level of consumption. And it will be equitable across the board. And we're also dropping deficit spend by quite a bit.
Okay.
It's a lot to go over, and I hope I didn't bore you all.
No,
but,
not at all.
But this is
And we actually
this is
need
the
to
right
do this
thing
a couple
to
times.
do. Yeah, and I think that we've talked about it now a couple of years. We're working closely with JFO as well to make sure that we've not missed something. We've worked across state government with our various business partners. We actually met with state's attorneys and sheriffs yesterday and talked through what it is. This isn't displacing their internal resources by any means, but it gives their internal resources the support that they need to be able to provide access to their broader user community.
Okay.
And now we're jumping into projects. All yours.
Online, okay. So last year, we participated in some testimony about our dashboard and how we're reporting out project performance and spent some time reevaluating how we were actually defining our status categories and our risk categories. So we've updated our project status categories, and you see on the screen here, to simplify it so that getting to like one of our strategic activities is to make things less complex and meet the user where they are. And so this gives the Vermont citizen who might be looking at our dashboard better understanding of what does green really mean, right? What does yellow mean? So we basically lessened some of the complexity in what was in our previous categories, which went a little too detailed into like percentages and stuff that really aren't necessarily accurate. They vary from project to project, and made them a little bit easier to understand. So you'll see those new status and risk definitions on the dashboard. At the bottom of it, you'll see where everything is now defined in I think an easier way. Not only does it tell you, what does green mean, what does yellow mean, what does red mean, but also like why it matters. Why is it important to understand these different categories when you're managing projects, right? It's basically what tells the team, things are going well. We don't have any, perceived blockers or hurdles coming up that we need to get over. Yellow means there might be an issue coming up that we want to pay attention to, or there's a risk that something could happen. Maybe we find out that somebody's retiring, for example. Okay, so that means we need a succession plan or we need to do something to mitigate that risk, right? And then red is usually the project team has done all they can to avoid a risk, and now we need somebody with authority to come in and help us. It might be in contract negotiations, it might be for funding, it might mean for staff. And as the PMO, we don't have that authority, so we might go to our secretary or one of the other agency partners that we're working with and ask them for help. All this does is these are things that we do to make sure that we avoid catastrophic issues or issues to arise. Once they become an issue, then they're a problem we're all trying to solve. But a risk is supposed to help us kind of perceive issues coming up and get ahead of them and solve them before they actually do cause harm to projects.
And
So,
these are snapshot metrics, so you can see a project in the yellow 1 week and 2 weeks later, it's
It could
back
be
in the
green.
green.
Yeah.
So it's just a point in time. View.
Yeah. so next slide.
I think you're behind.
He is behind.
Sorry.
Yeah. Sleeping at the wheel.
Get a new eye, I'm gonna get a new IT guy for this.
So, yes, what Denise was saying is true. The annual report and these metrics are a point in time snapshot of project performance and capacity. So we ran the data for the annual report in December, and it's actually ran on New Year's Eve exactly to try to give you guys as close to real data as we could. And so at that time, we had 48 active projects, 68% of them were on track, 25% had risks that were being managed, and 7% were at that level where we needed leadership to get involved and kind of help us solve for problems. I think on the dashboard today, we're like at 52 projects, now we're 51, something like that. So that dashboard gets updated every week versus the annual report, which is up to year. So that's that.
Do people look at it every week?
The dashboard?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, so, well, Lisa does. There are a few others that reach out every once in a while too, but I actually have set an expectation with my team. So getting to the portfolio structure that Denise was talking about, for each of those portfolios, enforcement, regulation, life and learning, I have a portfolio manager assigned. And then I have a deputy director for the PMO. We're in the process of recruiting for a director. And their responsibility is to look at that dashboard and make sure that, one, there aren't any gaps in data, nothing's missing or gone awry. And then if there is, they go back into our project management tool and try to resolve those discrepancies. So they are supposed to be reviewing it, and then the PMs update the data every week. So every Friday, they have to have all their project data updated in the tool, and the dashboard runs Monday morning as a refresh and pulls that data out into the dashboard. So that's the cycle. So every week it's getting looked at, every week it's getting updated, and that's how we kind of maintain oversight over those projects.
And do you find it helpful?
Yes, I do, actually. It's a big portfolio, right? And so I think the real value of the dashboard and the tool that we have is that we can see all of the projects across the enterprise. In the past, you couldn't have that transparency and visibility. It would have been impossible, right? If you think about it, I think the Agency of Human Services, for example, they probably have, I don't know, 10, 11 projects just within their agency. In the past, they would not even have a dashboard, but they might have Excel spreadsheets that were maintaining some of that data that you see today. But that wouldn't include things going on at the Agency of Commerce and Community Development or the Department of Labor or at DMV, right? You wouldn't see all of those. So two things, you wouldn't get a good enterprise view of how projects are performing across the executive branch, across state government. Two, you'd have no idea how much money you were spending in total, right? You could go to AHS and ask them, how are your projects tracking? How much money are you spending? But even back before ADS was created and the Enterprise Project Management Office was created, AHS was siloed. They didn't have an agency view. Every department had its own little project management office. They did create an agency level project management office, but it depended on the Department for Children and Families and the Department of Vermont Health Access to provide them data to inform it. So even back then, it was very disjointed. You couldn't get a good, clear view of how projects were performing. Now, with the tools that we have, not only can we see how projects are performing across the executive branch, we can also see how much we're spending. We can also look at resource capacity. We finally have a tool today that I can use that says, from a state perspective, we are at capacity or over capacity on state project managers that we can assign. What that does is it tells me when a business partner comes into intake and says, I need to do this thing, we can look at it and say, I don't have a state resource for this, which means we have to go out and get contracted support. That opens up a dialogue with the business partner that says, that's a cost. Getting to what Denise and Kate were saying, our rate's $88 an hour for project managers. Contracted support is close to $300 an hour now. It's a big difference, right? I now have a tool though that gives me the data I need to project into the future and say, you know what, I can't give you that PM today on the state side, but in 3 months I can. Can we slow roll this a little bit to free up those resources? And then oftentimes what you'll see is a lot of those contracted resources end up in agencies that have federal funding because the other agencies don't have the benefit of a federal fund to pay for those resources. So the state resources end up, on other things and frankly, just being completely upfront, like HS is your biggest federal spend.
It's the biggest
Partner.
department.
It is. And with their implementation, especially if it's a Medicaid funded project, it's 90% federally funded. So if I'm sitting here balancing, do I put a state PM on DMV versus a Medicaid funded project? I'm probably going to put the state PM on DMV because DMV is less likely to have 90% federal funding. So sometimes that can come into it, but the tool really informs capacity more than it does that. It just opens that dialogue with the business partner. That's not to say that ultimately my goal would be eventually to reduce our reliance on contractors. I would like for us to be able to have more state resources involved in these projects and less contracted support. And that's because 1, contracted support's very expensive. 2, there's an additional level of oversight that's required that is time consuming. Whereas, I can have my portfolio managers focus on training and development of their junior staff to help them with their career growth and doing better project management versus spending all of their time making sure our contractor is staying true to our standards. It's a lot easier to have a state employee follow the standards that the state has developed than it is a contractor who's going to come in and utilize their role.
How does somebody navigate? You got one department over here that really thinks that they need to get information over there, 2 separate departments. How do they get into that department? Do they get somebody assigned from your department to go in and grab that information? Are they allowed to freely go from one department to another to get information? They're trying to do a project, they're trying to figure something out. You got transportation that's looking and all that. So how does that navigate?
Well, it depends, right? So in my world, if there's an IT project, DMV is a good example. And this is partially why I think the new portfolio model helps with this. But when we were rolling out DMV Core, there was one technology element that needed to be factored in, and it's a very technical term called the message switch. So the message switch is part of the dispatch business process, where if I'm at DMV enforcement and I pull somebody over, I need to find out what their traffic records are, right? And so this message switch is a thing that connects DMV, public safety, law enforcement, right?
And to courts.
And to courts.
And to.
Right. And so what happens is DMV doesn't own that contract. The Department of Public Safety does. So my team has the ability to say, hold on, let me contact my counterpart over here in public safety, which could be a field services IT manager or another project manager that's working on a similar effort. And then we can connect the 2 business partners together. And in this case, we were able to work with DMV and public safety on a contract amendment that allowed for changes to the message switch to allow the driver services and vehicle services project to continue.
But it almost has to be 24/7. I mean, if they're out there in the field and they're looking for that
It is.
information.
Oh,
Okay, so, how does that communicate back and forth?
in a project, that's a good explanation of the project. In sustainable operations, it already exists. So that's already determined to be a business critical 24/7 system.
Okay.
And so the uptime has to be available all the time.
Okay.
If it's not, that's where security comes in, where we have alerting to see if something is down or if something's not working. What we don't have alerting on is we don't have alerting on port systems. So ports moved out of the state environment 2 years ago now. And so that's something that we are sorting through under more of an inter-branch service agreement.
Mhm.
But yes, the business criticality systems where you want to make sure that data is interfacing on the regular as part of the operations, those systems exist today. What we need to do is make sure that we track more of them. Summer EBT was another example where there's interface of both AOE data and DCF data. And I think it's DCF, 2 departments in DCF. And so, as the facilitator to ensure that they can collate their information in one single place and that we are protected if there are restricted components associated with them, but the data is not ours. We really are just either the custodian or the facilitator or the service provider to make sure that they can maintain continuity of operations.
Even then, to protect privacy, there's gotta be a sign-in of somebody to be able to go there and there'd be
Yeah.
access to obviously denied if
Yeah.
they didn't have the proper.
Correct. Yeah, that's part of that least privileged access model that we take with security.
Mm.
And some of the legacy systems can't handle that concept.
Mhm.
And so we have to build a little wrapper around it and then restrict access all the way around. So that does make that collaboration limited.
So the other thing that the tool does is it allows us to provide performance metrics like this with a schedule and budget variance. So last year on the annual report, we were able to include the budget variance charts with each project, which basically just shows how the budget increased or decreased over the time of while the project was ongoing. This year, we were able to add schedule variance as well, so it will show those changes in the schedule. And what that does is it just lets us know that things that happened on this project that have caused the schedule to, go out or shorten, the budget to increase or decrease. And then if questions come up, we know to go to a certain area to look at, like change orders and those types of things that would have led to that.
So I do have a question for the members of the committee. Have any of you been on the dashboard, looked at the dashboard, had feelings or thoughts or feedback about what it's giving you for information?
No, it's more than one question.
Good point.
Get on the dashboard and in terms of feedback on the information that it's giving me, I think in general, not having the IT experience, seeing the red, you get freaked out.
Yeah.
You want it to be explained. I know it's not going to be on the dashboard, but I'm hoping committees will do that. But that's my sort of very brief feedback.
I would say if you see the red over time, expect that secretaries, deputy secretaries, or commissioners should be able to speak on what's happening, because that would mean that it would be escalated to the point where we've been notified about something. If it's in the yellow, not always. We're touching everybody's stuff, so we tend to be much more plugged in, but that would be a good rule of thumb.
Yeah, and I always,
The colors.
the red, it's an interesting, that's an interesting comment that you make. And what I've experienced over several years of doing this with even our business partners, is nobody wants to see red on their status
No.
reports. And in fact, they'll even negotiate with me sometimes, like, can we make it amber?
Yeah.
I know.
Purple, does it really have to be red?
More
Like,
Yeah.
it's an international standard, so it's not something we just made up here in
Yeah.
Vermont. We follow what's called the Project Management Institute, body of knowledge. It's an international standard. All project management industries use this. But what I tell people is red is not meant to scare anybody and is not made meant to make anybody feel bad. What it is it's supposed to alert us that we have a significant issue and we need help solving it. And that's really what red means. It doesn't mean that the whole project is a failure. One of the most common reasons you will see red as a risk on any project is resource constraints. And that is a fact of state government. No matter what agency you're working with, no matter who the business partner is, no matter how critical the system is that we're trying to build, there are never enough staff. And the problem with it is, on the IT side, it's easy to go out and get contractors to come in and help us manage things, right? On the business side, it's not. So not only are we asking a lot of our business partners to bring people to the table to help us write requirements, help us approve a design document, make sure that, you know, they're testing the system as it's being developed to ensure that it's working according to their expectations. They're doing all of that, which is a full-time job in itself, on top of their operations responsibilities. It's very rare that our business partner agencies have the funding or capacity to backfill staff who are allocated to these projects. So when you look at UI modernization, for example, the Department of Labor staff that process unemployment insurance claims, quite a few of them are located at National Life with the vendor and with our team on the delivery of a new UI modernized system. There's nobody backfilling them back down at Grey Mountain Drive to process claims. So they have to accommodate both. And so that's the biggest reason you have risk, is resource constraints. Obviously, funding is always an issue too, right? So you might have a good bucket of federal dollars when you start, and the longer a project takes to get going, the more constraints you might have on that funding, because you didn't anticipate it. You didn't anticipate a contract taking 2 years to negotiate. Like, those are things that can really drag down a project and put you in the red. But they're not insurmountable. It just means I need somebody with authority to come in and help. And it might mean going out and getting temp employees. It might mean, you know, coming here and asking you all for more money, which is never a comfortable seat to put our leaders in, but sometimes that's the reality.
Across the hall.
Good to know. I'm gonna make a note of that. So anyway, I just try to encourage people not to look at red as a really bad thing. I mean, it's not great. None of us want to see red on our dashboards.
It means we're doing
It means we're doing our job.
right, doing,
Yeah.
right,
We're not
They
covering
should
things
get
up.
attention.
correct.
Yes.
Why don't we just go to the slide of the dashboard?
Yeah.
Because that can be the last slide.
Yeah, so the one we glossed over is just the projects that closed last year, and you can see that in the report. This is what the dashboard looked like when we created the slide deck. So it's a little bit of an eye chart, but the first page of the dashboard gives you these widgets to just kind of give you a snapshot in time of how overall the enterprise is functioning. It tells you the overall status. So currently there's 52 projects. I think it's 7 yellow. How many red? 4? 3. Well, that's good. And then the rest is green, right? Total change in project duration in month by agency. So this just shows how many projects increased their duration over, I think it says by agency. So like AHS, the reason that one's so big is really it's the integrated eligibility improvement system. That's one that they've been planning for several years, but they have some other big ones too, like CCWIS, which is the replacement of the child welfare system. The child development information system is another one. So there's some really big projects that they're managing. And so you're good. That's why you see them so large. Annual operating versus implementation budget by fiscal year. So those are just like snapshots in time at an enterprise level. Page 2 is the project inventory. That's the one people are most interested in. So it gives you a list in alphabetical order by agency of all of the projects. The first column is what we call the project start date, and the second column is the implementation start date. And what's the difference between those two dates? So the project start date is the date that the PMO first received the request to manage a project. It's the very first time anybody heard of it, right?
In your department.
In my department, yeah. So PMO has it. They might be going into a procurement process, so it's not actually, you know, in execution or what we call execution yet. That's what the implementation start date is. So when you look at the ACCD grants management solution, it came into the PMO in 2022 and implementation started in 2024. That 2024 date is the date we started working with a system implementation vendor.
That's when the
That's
schedule
when the-
starts on the project.
Right, that's when the schedule actually starts. So that's more important date than the project start date, because that is the date that we start really spending money on the project. We've negotiated a contract with a vendor. We have a baseline schedule, we have a baseline budget, everything's kind of set to start.
So is the project start date when the customer or the they think it started?
Well, it's really the date that everybody approved the project to move forward. So in other words, the business partner has told us, we have the money to pay for this. And the CIO has said, yeah, and that aligns with our tech strategy. So everybody's agreed to move forward with the project. That's what that date is.
And it could also be that we need to get the RFP going, we need to get resources on board.
Right.
And in some cases, even on the federal side, we are expending dollars. So the IE project, we have expended dollars because we are paying for resources to get us up to the point where we're at now, which is contract negotiations. But those dates mean a lot for us. And so if we had a utility that would allow us to see some trend analysis, we would be actually able to see time over time which agencies are going from conception date to actual start date, and you may see some variance on delay. You could look at it from a project overrun based on number of agencies. And so we're still looking at snapshot data. We don't have the trend analysis.
Our tools don't allow for that.
We are
Not yet.
Not
we have
yet.
found some very economical tools that allow us to do what we are doing here. But we do see opportunity for improvement.
Okay.
So then the initial completion and estimated completion dates, it's basically the same concept. The estimated completion date is based on that same baseline that the implementation start date is. So in other words, when we first get a project, we kind of do how long do we think it's really going to take to deliver this thing? That becomes your initial completion date, right? So we're thinking that should only take 18 months, right? Based on what we know about the technology or what we think we know about the technology. The estimated completion date then becomes the real date because the contractor has said, well, it's not going to take 18 months. It's actually going to take 2 years. That changes that date, right? Because they've now come in with their expertise and the fact that it's their solution that they're building and they know how their staff operate and they know all the pitfalls they're going to run into working with a state agency. So that's a better baseline. So the second column and the first column basically establish your schedule baselines and what we start to really track performance against. That's where, as I like to say, the rubber hits the road, if you will. Everything up to then is the car is still up on the jack and the tires are being put on. And once you get to those dates, then you've got it on the road moving forward.
So just using the first one as an example, housing infrastructure. So implementation start date isn't there yet.
Right.
Your department hasn't started working on it. But
Correct.
there is still an estimated completion date.
There is an estimated completion date, and I'm not really sure.
This
But
could be
that's
part
based on-
of that polling, when Stacy had said that she asked the team to review this weekly to make sure that the data is accurate and updated. We do manually pull this, so there are some times when the data feed won't fully pull all data sets over, so that could be an example.
Well, or they might have put the date in the wrong field.
Or what if there was a statutory,
That could be too.
that where it said in statute, this will be done by 2028.
That very well could be too. Yep.
But the dashboard isn't, it's not the ability to make it that interactive where we could go that granular into the detail.
I would love at some point to have a dashboard that would allow us to drill down, because then you could click on it and click down a couple layers to get to a little bit more detail. We don't have that capability today.
And one that you didn't have to manually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it is every data element on this dashboard has a finger on a keyboard, putting that data into a system. And sometimes they miss, like there's multiple data fields. I'm not gonna get into a lot on how the tool is configured. I'm happy to give you a demo of it someday if you want, but you probably would be like, oh God.
No, I think we
Don't
all
really care.
know about typos, right?
Right, but yeah, I mean, they might put it in the wrong date field because they think they're in the right screen and they should have moved to a different screen, and it happens, but that's why we do quality control checks, and so that one is something I will make sure is fixed.
Is your goal to have it be automated?
Yes, it's a goal, yeah. I've been talking with our chief data and artificial intelligence officer about basically rebranding the dashboard and using some different ways to bring that data forward. We have some ideas, but nothing that's really concrete yet. We haven't even shared it with our secretary yet. It's just very high level, whiteboarded out and a picture on someone's phone. So very technical.
All right, there.
But-
That's something before
Starts
we
there.
launch, we would definitely make sure we.
Yeah.
The committee.
Yeah, one thing I will say, we're very invested in continuous improvement. So, the additional columns on the project inventory came out of last year's work with the House Energy and Digital Infrastructure Committee. So very open to feedback, suggestions, questions, things that you guys would like to see. If we have the tools to do it, we're more than happy to do it.
Sure.
I know that we've probably overseen our welcome.
No, you will never overstay your welcome because there's always so much to talk about.
It was amazing. We covered, I think, 300 pages in just 2 hours. So that is the extent of the report. Light reading. A lot of detail, a lot of good detail, and we're open to feedback, suggestions, concerns, comments.
Great.
Pat on the back.
You probably get everything. All of it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, do we have any other? Anyone else want to speak?